Welcome everyone back to the channel. My name is John Tyler Tuck, and today we are going to be talking about magic mushrooms. I do want to preface this video by saying I do not in any way endorse, encourage, or promote the use, especially the misuse of these very sacred and potent psychedelic compounds. This video is made for educational purposes and also for entertainment purposes, and I hope that I can inform or educate somebody also along the way. Personally, there was quite a few different reasons I used magic mushrooms this time. I had an intention to heal from a very negative prior psychedelic experience years ago that was so intense it left me feeling like I was, how do you put it, trying to pump air into a tire that had blown up. I felt very fried, kind of, and for a very long time, and my emotional state was a lot more intense. It was a horribly frightening experience, even though during the experience it wasn't very frightening. It was just the mental processes that happened after the experience that was helping integrate that experience were like, oh my God, that happened? And it was intense, and it felt like it never really went away either for a very long time. I don't even know if it was real, what I took. I did not test my substance, and if there was anything I could have done to have made that ensured to be a good experience, checking, a good trip sitter, set and setting, it's from people you know and trust, and it's a safe compound. None of those boxes were checked. It would learn from my horrible mistakes. That was one reason. Another reason, and I have a journal here that I wrote down intentions in during the trip, was just generic healing. I had been through a lot the last half a decade in regards to family issues, friend issues, that psychedelic trip, falling in love, feeling a broken heart for the first time, at least a really true broken heart, from what is it? It's not phileo, eros, from eros love, a broken heart from eros love. And that's incredibly painful. I would honestly, I'd put that up to par with the bad acid experience. It was pretty accurate. Another reason I wanted to trip, despite healing both of those, was to introspect myself, to see inside myself. It felt like I had been through so much that I was just going too fast to slow down and see what's going on inside me, to analyze it and to fix it. Because you can't fix it if you can't analyze it. You can't dissect it, none of that. And I was going too fast. It felt like I was in fight or flight all the time. I felt like I was going too fast to understand that. Another thing I wanted to touch on was quitting vaping, smoking in general, but vaping. I haven't smoked a cigarette in years, but I have vaped for a while, and it is something I would like to quit. I know it's not the healthiest for my body. I know it hurts me. I know my lungs would feel better if I didn't. I know they have chemicals in them that are bad for you. And I know, in 30 years that they're going to look up and be like, oh, there's some other problem that these things caused. We told you. I know. I'm having the hardest time quitting it. The hardest time. And it honestly was something that wasn't ever touched on during the trip, unfortunately. But that's not to say that it won't be touched on in later plant medicine ceremonies, experiences, etc., because I do feel like it's something that the mushrooms wanted to work with me on, but it wasn't immediately as pressing as the other issues that I had asked them to help me heal. And so these were the triggers from that were caused by the need for healing and introspection and quitting smoking and connection to the divine and the bad trips and the years of pain. These were the triggers and things to work through. And so number one was not responding to anger with anger. That was a problem I had spiritually. I want to be able to love somebody even if they're coming at me in an incredibly unloving way. Just because somebody's nature changed doesn't mean my nature should change. Just like the parable with the guy who gets bitten by the snake and still helps the snake. Well, the snake's nature is to bite. Is that going to change my nature, which is to help? I don't want it to. There's a intense nobility in being absolutely that authentic and loving just loving. That's the only way we're going to heal this world. It's the only way we can heal this world is unconditional love. Hurting people hurt people. And so if I'm hurt and I respond to you with anger, when you come at me with anger, I'm going to hurt you right back. Because you wanted to hurt me because you were hurt. But how am I going to heal you if all I keep doing is hurting you? And see, we find ourselves in a vicious cycle that can't be escaped very easily. The trigger of my inner child being seemingly very too sensitive. That was another trigger to work through. It's feeling like I'm too sensitive to reality. It was that feeling like I'm a baby. I was thrown into this world after the, being conscious after that intense of an acid trip. So it felt like I was like, what the heck are fingers? Why are they called fingers? They look like they thing. Like, these are weird, stumpy little, what the hell are these? And you have no idea how you can even think of anything outside of what you have. Such a bizarre experience. And, Timothy Leary and Ram Dass talked about stuff like that. And you just try to bring it back because you think that information will heal all of mankind and it'll fix everything. And I do think that's possible, but, it's going to take a lot to try to bring something like that back. I think the better place is to live in it constantly and continuously and realize that that alone is a beacon, a spotlight on you for everyone else to see the spirit that's moving through you. Your fruit is a spotlight for people to see the spirit moving through you. And I had a problem with feeling unloved, even by God, the divine, everything. My partner, myself, when they still loved me, even my family when they loved me. I had a problem with accepting the way that people loved me as love. I was like, it's not real love. This ain't real love. Human love is human love. Unconditional love is an exception in the fact that it is godly love. But don't expect everybody to. And so I had to put myself in a place, which also had to do with the inner child being sensitive and not responding to anger with anger. This whole spiel was all interconnected. And it was all met on the shroom trip. So first of all, I'm going to tell you what I worked through on these. I'm going to read off to you some incredible things I wrote down that gave me insights later on into myself. And then I would just like to tell you, basically what I experienced. The solutions to the anger and the suffering and all of that, it made so much sense. Like, it just made so much sense. And I knew it before I took them. I couldn't see it. I knew it, but I couldn't see it. You understand? I couldn't even inner see it. But this experience helped me inner see it. It helped me see it for myself, that I'm not my ego. I didn't have an ego death experience. I didn't take very much. 1.5 grams roundabout. That's not a big dose. It's not. But it was profound enough, and I took it on an empty stomach and with some lemon juice. It was enough to give me enough of a separation between me and my ego to see. The solution was living beyond it. It was living beyond the anger and the suffering and the ego. It was beyond it. And when they said, what do you need? The mushrooms asked me, what do I need? And I said, I need healing. I need love like that. You know what it told me? Be it. It told me to be it. It told me if you're looking in your external world for something, you're not going to find it. You got to be it. And that way, you're a walking manifestation of this. That it was for you to do. It was for you to fulfill the whole time. And they told me, just be it. It solved everything. It's like life is pouring from your heart center, And when you're in the right place, when you're in the right space, you can just be it. Be God. Be the flow. Be the breath. The spirit. Be it. And I wrote, holy man, what was I so afraid of? It was all me. And that was written because I was so terrified before I took them. And you know the acid trip, which I'm going to make a video hopefully on my channel at some point in regards to it and covering it in depth, because there was a lot of information I gathered. But that was a good enough reason to be so afraid. But when I took it, I said, what was I so afraid of? It was all me. It was all me. I said, who am I? Everything. He wanted me to write down who I am. I am everything. I am the all. He wanted me to write down what I like to do. So a little bit of everything. I like to draw, write, sing, dance. I love to connect, experience, living, being, creating good, and living in harmony, love, and most of all, I love to experience love. And I wrote, thank you, Yeshua, the Christ, for everything. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And in him all things were created through him and for him. He said all things, man. He didn't just say some things. You don't get to take your ginseng and throw out the cannabis, you know. You don't get to think that one thing's good and one thing's bad. Yes, nightshade can kill you, but it does have uses. And it's rather using them for love. That's what you use them for. You know, are you going to use something for good, or are you going to use it for evil? And if your will wants to use them for evil, how do you go about getting a new will? That's where ego death comes into play. The experience was incredibly healing. I was shaking before I took them. They were incredibly blue little mushrooms, bluer than the wall behind me. As blue as that, or even up there, is blue mushrooms. Might throw a picture up there. And they were tiny little pieces of shake, which is honestly why I think it was more potent. And I had fasted for a little while before I ate them. I'd had a mango beforehand because I was thinking the citric acid is going to help me break it down. I don't like getting sick, especially when I'm tripping. I don't want to be in that headspace when I'm tripping. Every time I get sick, I get in a bad headspace. So I definitely don't want that while I'm tripping. You know what I mean? And I'm just trying to avoid it because, you know, purging, it's going to happen eventually on a plant medicine journey. It's just part of it, you know, whether it's through Kambo, Ayahuasca, or Psilocybin mushrooms. Even coughing from cannabis is a form of purging. Cannabis is an expectorant, so you're getting stuff out of your lungs. If you use it sparingly, because obviously if you use it a whole lot, it's going to lose expectorant abilities. You're going to build up tar instead. Neither here nor there. I keep getting sidetracked. I took them, prayed over them, burned Palo Santo over them, played some Icaros. And not necessarily ayahuasca Icaros, but it's by a band, an ayahuasca type band, a shamanic band called Menesh de Mor, and I hope I said that right. And they make some incredible stuff. I played Calling in the Plants, which was a song that has to do with calling in the plant, the spirits of the plants, the healing plants. And I prayed over them and I said, please do what I need you to do. Yeshua, don't let me be going somewhere outside where you want me to go. You know, that's one of my biggest fears is touching something that's going to put me in the domain of the devil and not being able to get out. You would think he would hate you, you know. And here's the thing, the funny thing is I'm not even sure that he was, you know, like a real entity or more or less an energy that can be personified as anything that's anti the message and motives of Christ and what he wanted, because even Christ called Peter a Satan, you know. That doesn't mean that that's incorrect. It's just a different way of looking at the same thing. You know, does that mean Satan can be an entity? I don't know. Is there an entity that has set himself up in complete opposition of the will of God? If you think so, then you can see him. I don't see that. And even in other faiths, I see a compassionate merging rather than a two things that conflict each other. They don't conflict each other. You're going to find what you want to find. If you want to find things that connect, you know, you're going to find them. But if you want to find things that separate, you're going to do that too. But just know the devil is the one who's been personified as the one who likes to separate and divide. It was divide and conquer after all, wasn't it? Anyway, I took them 45 minutes go by, and I said thank you to every bite. I was so afraid. I was like, thank you, you know, please do what you need to do, nothing else. And save 45 minutes, really nothing was going on. Smoke a bowl, which I normally do to try to kick it in a little quicker. It helps with come up anxiety and such, and nausea. Still wasn't really feeling nothing. And so I said, I'm gonna go ahead and get in the bath. I feel a little, like my brain's kind of jumping a little bit, so I'm gonna go get in the bath. It'll give me something calming to do. Got in the bath, put some Epsom salts on me, which I just realized after the trip that Epsom salts are actually bad for you. I didn't know that before. But they were lavender, and it helped calm me down 100%. And I come out of the bath, and I'm sitting here, and I'm definitely tripping, but it feels more like I'm drunk than I'm anything. It just feels like my body's heavy. I'm starting to get this weird like head feeling coming on. And I looked at this coffee can that Timothy, my partner, had sitting out, and it said Delight on it, Oreo Delight or something like that, and it had this big sun, like a sun looking thing, and you know why a sun would be important to me as a syncretist, and it was just beaming, and I was like, Delight. And the mushrooms look at what I'm looking at and look at how I'm processing it, which they can do that. It's a funny thing. And Terrence McKenna even, everybody knows the mushrooms speak to you, man. And they were looking at it and they were like, that's about you. That's about you. I said, what? I looked deeper and they said, distributed light, divided light. That's you, delight. You're the light, delight. Be delighted. You're delight. And it was perfect timing because Alan Watts, I had just put him on and he started talking about shivers of delight. And I was sitting there like kind of shaking, but it wasn't like a shaking like I was nervous. It was like I was getting bad energy out. Every time I took a deep breath, or any breath I took was a deep breath, it felt like I was just getting it out, like bad energy. The whole time, the whole night was filled with sighs of relief. And somehow the mushrooms went right to what they needed to go to, didn't touch anything else, pulled only what they needed to out, and rewired the connections. I don't know how they did it. I didn't even know what they did. It was like while I was on them, I was having these realizations that was, bro, you're so much more than this. You've limited yourself to this little body and what you think you amount to in this material. Well, you're not it. You are it all. You're beautiful. Can't you see it? You know? And it was like a duh moment. Like I should have known, bro. Like, but I needed it. I needed it to show me. So whether or not it was a duh moment for me doesn't mean whether or not it doesn't mess with its profundity. It doesn't mess with how profound it was. Because the whole experience was profound. Playing, really calming music, and it was like this slowness just comes over me. And I look out the window that morning, and I saw the Spirit of God in the sunlight. And it felt like Sunday morning wafer cookies. And that was what I wrote down. I said, it feels like Sunday morning wafer cookies. Like when you're a kid, and everything's so fresh and beautiful and delightful, right? Delight. And, before you even have a moment to be able to judge, is Sunday school good for my mental health? Is this correct? And you were just sitting with that inner child joy of being with God. That was all you were happy about. You didn't care because you were most of the time in a nursery playing with toys and stuff and drinking Tang. At least I was when I was a kid in church services until I was much older. Oh man, oh man, oh man. It was incredible. It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. And I felt that joy like I hadn't felt since I was a kid. And along with that joy came this quietness and this slowness. And it was the peace. I recalled it was the peace that surpassed all understanding. I sat with the peace that surpassed all human understanding. It was beyond anything my brain could think up. It was just there. It was there. And you have to slow down to see it so you can tune into it. I had never noticed. I was going so fast. I was so worried about everything. I didn't slow down. I didn't pay attention. I didn't trust the universe enough. I'm sorry, my nose ring is like itching me like crazy, but I had not slowed down enough to see anything at all. And I would say from that experience, it does tell me that psychedelics can be used as a tool to connect with God. That they're not something that many of the modern day Christians and the Christian church views as being a wrongful sacrament or something that's tottering on a line you shouldn't be, trying to cross and stuff like that. No, it was so okay. It was as okay as life was. It was as okay as you make it. It was as okay as Sunday morning cookie wafers. It was profound. Sunday morning cookie wafers. Out of anything I could have thought of, that's what I thought of. It reminded me of the nursery when I was a baby. And it's just so pure. It's like God looks at each one of us like we're still that child, because deep down, we're not this ego that we've constructed in this body. We are that child. We have an inner child, and he sees it at all times. He sees it and he takes it into consideration. And believe me, just knowing that was like, I could feel it. I could see it. It wasn't only that I'm hallucinating on a substance. You never hallucinate on a psychedelic. You don't ever see something that's not there, or that you think's there when it's not there. You never, what you're seeing is you're seeing because you took something, but it'll show you things in such an intricate and interconnected way. You could not deny that the hand of God plays even in these psychedelic realms, 110%. And it made me really question the idea of manna in the Old Testament, because I've heard, a lot of people have said that the manna in the Old Testament, many scholars think it's a mushroom. It fell from the heavens. It gave them visions. They ate it off the ground, and it looked like bread, honey bread. There's a lot of connections. You could say it fell from heaven. Mycelium, spores, they come from the air and they land on the ground, coming from heaven, and they sprout up in the morning like manna. And they would eat them and have these visions and intense religious experiences. And it may, before I took it, I would question it kind of like, I don't know about that. Because there's a lot of psychedelic stuff that is just complete, utter bullcrap when it comes to trying to incorporate it within any sort of Christian ideal. Like Jesus was a mushroom. No, he wasn't. Goodness. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to take somebody who is so historically significant that everybody in the entire world practically knows his name, and you're going to boil him down to always being a mushroom. No, we're taking some of these and running too far with them. We're taking some of these psychedelic viewpoints and running too far with them because people are excited. But, to somebody who has never met Jesus in a traditional sense, a mushroom would feel a lot like Jesus, bro. And they do feel a lot like Jesus. That trip where Jesus came to me in the trip, because psychedelics are a tool to connect you to the spirit world. God exists in the spirit world as he is spirit. And so you can also connect with other things, don't get me wrong. But God is spirit, so he's there too. Inevitably, when somebody takes a psychedelic and they run into the spirit of God, they might feel inspired. Because inspired means to be in spirit, in ruach, in pneuma, to breathe in, right? Yahweh. All right, so to breathe in, to become inspired by the Spirit of God. And we see a ton of this coming out of, the 60s and all of this other stuff, where people just have these super complex ideas about why we should treat each other right, why we should be in tune with our conscience, why good vibes matter, why high vibes are even a good thing, And all of that came into play within the 60s and continued to increase throughout the 80s and the 90s and even into the 2020s, okay? So what we're going to see is an increase of consciousness. We're going to see a lot of people begin to understand, okay, that the psychedelic experience is not something that you have to take a drug to have, to tune into God. The mushrooms showed me that everything I did in my life was an offering to God. Everything, from my state of mind to how I'm healing, to how I carry myself in the day-to-day, what my mind state's like. Every little tiny aspect of life, even picking up this little terrarium, you know? This is all a form of the Dharma. It's all an expression of the play, which is all just a worship act. It's a worship act. And when you have the devotion towards God at the forefront of your mind, whatever you create, you're not thinking about, is this audience going to enjoy it? You know, is this segment of the audience going to like this part? You know? No, because you're doing it to the best of your ability as a worship act. There's no better way to create. And it showed me that. It showed me to live in that state. And I have since. You know, a big part of these plant medicine ceremonies and experiences are integration. To have integrity, you must integrate. It's, in essence, the exact same thing. If you have an experience that brought you a different perspective, that healed you in some way, say you went to another country or something, if you did not integrate that and actively live what you learned out and put it in you, basically, which is what it means to integrate, to put it in you, not just to have the idea floating around, but to incorporate it, you know. You won't treat people from another country a certain type of way for a certain type of crazy cultural prejudice that you had at one point been prompted to see these people with, but because you visited, you have a different eye-opening perspective. Do you get my analogy? And that's the best analogy you can do, because trying to describe the psychedelic experience to someone who has not had it, if you have not had it, it's like trying to describe the color red to someone who has never seen it, or what colors look like in general to a blind man. It's very, very, very hard. But I sat with it, and I journaled, and I drew, I drew, and I listened to music, and I breathed, and I meditated, and it was a good experience. I worked through so much. It was everything I needed and nothing I didn't. I had no idea why I was still afraid. And I went outside in the morning, was listening to John Patton and MC Yogi and some songs by Saint Finnegan. These are some really good high vibrational artists that you guys can check out on your own time. But I was vibing with them, and the sunrise was hitting my face, and the sun was peeking out from behind the clouds. It was just so beautiful. As behold the Lamb that taketh away the sin of the world. Every morning, Aries, bright and early. Whew. I ate a mango while watching it, and it was the most beautiful experience ever. It felt like church. It felt more than church. It was on a Wednesday, or Thursday morning, but Wednesday night I took them. And it's all for God to get us back to that state of unconditional love. Shabbat Shalom, Assalamu Alaikum, and Namaste. If you genuinely got something out of this or learned something, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Peace and love.